So hello and welcome back to J Designs. Today we are going to talk about the very weird front end that is on the front of this truck right here and how it actually hurts performance. Crazy, I know. And we're also going to get into a little bit of like engineering philosophy or just a mindset you should have when you're adding something to your truck or when you're building something that's going to go on your truck. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's talk about how this thing hurts performance. So in a few ways, are probably the one that's most obvious, is there is pretty much zero protection for that. So as you can see there, it's just headlight, grille, and there's no actual structure there. So this beam right here is actually a factory beam that runs from one side to the other. Another way the front end of this truck actually hurts performance is there's no weight on the nose. Weight on the nose is kind of important when you're going off-road. Hopefully you can see there's some mud on the side of the truck there. Weight on the nose is important when you're doing a hill climb, because as you probably know, when a truck's climbing a hill or anything's climbing a hill, weight is actually transitioned to the rear a little bit. So having a big heavy front bumper on the front end actually gives your front tires a bit more traction, and you get a bit more even traction on the tires. The weight up there will help to give the front more traction, and it'll help to pull a truck up a hill. But this front end is tremendously light. It's actually, the way it sits right now, is only 4 pounds heavier than stock. So I'm actually leaving that location now, but I did wanted to add this in the video that the traction or the motive force that your tires have is directly proportional to the amount of weight that is bearing down on them. That is all. On off-road vehicles, most people mount a front winch to their front bumper, and as you can see, there's not really a front bumper on this thing, but it still does allow for the mounting of a winch. There's a little front hitch right here. The grill pops off and allows you to access the back of the pin, and then right up under the headlight here is the quick connect for the Anderson plug. Speaking of the winch, that's another way it actually hurts performance. So right behind this door is where I keep my winch. Yes, it stays in the interior because it's a remote mount. It can be mounted on the front or the rear of the truck. It's a bit of a pain, but that's another topic for another video. The way the winch actually hurts performance being mounted in the middle of the truck is it's in between these two tires. So the weight of that winch is distributed sort of 50-50. It's probably a little more to the rear. We already talked about front weight being good in some scenarios, but the reason why I don't like the weight of the winch in the middle is because it transitions a lot of weight to the rear. And weight on the rear of the truck isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's a bad thing when you want to slide the truck around and have a lot of fun while you're off-road. So this truck has a rear differential lock, and you can just lock that rear diff and it just boop, it will slide like crazy. But when you got the weight of the rear winch pressing down the rear, it's a little less tail happy. And I don't like that. Everyone likes big slidey drifts, right? Yeah, another weird thing about it is it kind of looks like it has an overbite, no? Weird. Also important to note, I actually made the front end on this truck. So hopefully, armed with the knowledge that this thing actually hurts performance and the fact that I actually made it like this intentionally, hopefully it raises the question in your mind, why did this crazy guy that has a YouTube channel build a front end on a truck that actually hurts its performance? So then why does the front end of this truck look the way that it does? Well, to the point of front weight, remember I can move that winch to the front whenever I want. I swear I can feel the difference in the like slidability of the truck. It's only 70 pounds, so it might just be in my head. And also to the point of protection, kind of a cool thing here. This is a little bit of a modular front end. So you'll see a bolt here and a bolt here, and there's two more on that side. So that is actually for, at some point I'll build a structural pickup here that goes like this, and there'll be tubes that run across, just like a traditional front bumper that fully protects the front of this truck. And that'll also add weight to the front of the truck. But because it's bolt-on, when I want to go hoon around and drive real fast, I can just unbolt it, drop that weight. We can pull the winch out, put it back in the back, and then we actually get good handling. We'll get to that in a second. The beauty of having this modular front end is I can always add the accessories I need for a particular task or remove them when I don't need them. Obviously, we can always add the weight of the winch and the front grille protection up here when I'm in particularly hilly terrain and help the truck on hill climbs. Talked a little bit about turn-in. So having weight on the nose of the truck is actually terrible for turn-in response. So when you crank that wheel, you have to turn all of the weight of a big heavy front bumper up here. And for me personally, I know this is gonna sound crazy because it's a truck, but for me personally, I like a truck that responds more or less like a sports car. So fun fact, so like the reason why the modern Corvette, I know it's gonna relate in a second. The reason why the modern Corvette went mid-engine is because taking weight off of the front of the vehicle and putting it on the back actually helps it to rotate. It's a little thing called moment of inertia. You can do a pretty simple demonstration with a hammer. So we got our hammer here. The way we're going to compare this hammer to the truck is, just trust me on this one, the pivot point of pretty much every vehicle that has front steering is the rear axle. If you have any questions on that, leave a comment down below and I will help you kind of understand the theory of a vehicle pivoting around its rear axle. But imagine it this way. So this is your pivot point. I got the rear axle in the front. This heavy weight on the hammer is going to be our front bumper that's very heavy. And then take a hammer and do this. You can do this at home. It's hard to rotate versus if you take that weight and put it again, this is going to be the rear axle now. Now we have a light front end or no front bumper like my truck, and it's incredibly easy to rotate. So heavy front weight, very, very poor turn response. Move weight to the rear, you get really, really good sharp turn response. Try it at home. It actually works. It's called moment of inertia. Big word, but simple concept, I promise. Fun fact, for the same exact reason that this doesn't have a big front bumper up here, the starting battery has actually been relocated all the way to the rear of the truck, right behind that rear tire, just to get that weight as far over the rear axle as possible and really get this thing to handle. Also with the front of this truck, it is just light. So a light vehicle is going to accelerate better, it's going to brake better, it's going to, obviously we talked about turning better. Another thing is like wear and tear on a vehicle. So when an engineer engineers a vehicle, they try to pull every little bit of weight out of that thing that they can, because weight adversely affects a vehicle in pretty much every measurable performance aspect. Weight is bad. That's why that front end is super light. Now, the front end of this truck is very weird, and it is not something that is for sale. It is something I made specifically for me because I have very, very weird tastes. Hopefully you learned something from this video. Maybe you learned the moment of inertia thing or how weight adversely affects a vehicle. If you learned something, please let me know, because you learning something from one of my videos gives me a very, very warm, fuzzy feeling inside. But there's one more point that I want to take away from this video, and that is, anytime you're adding anything to your vehicle or you're making any sort of a modification, this is essentially a process that like an engineer would go through, or something that an engineer would know, is that when you add something to your vehicle, there's always a trade-off. So for example, we get bad protection on the front of this truck, but it's got really good turn response. That's a trade-off, right? If we add a bunch of front weight to this thing, it can help us in like a hill climb scenario, but it can adversely affect the vehicle in other ways like acceleration. That is really the point I want to drive home, is that there are a lot of different ways that you can build any vehicle, not just an off-road truck, but there are always trade-offs in essentially everything you do. And with your build, it's best to think as much as you can about those trade-offs. Oh, and decide what is best for you. And don't rag on people for their vehicle just being different than yours. There's a whole bunch of different ways to do it. People are very diverse. There are a plethora of different ways to do it, and none of them are necessarily wrong. All right, so camper update here. I've been working away on it little by little over the past few weeks here. Having a ton of time to spend on it. I've been doing just little updates as I can. And I'm Jay. You've been watching Jay Designs. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. Thanks for watching.